Hi, and welcome to the show. Today we've got Alex Azzi, who is the co-founder and CEO of XR Workout, and also the founder of the Playa AI Foundation. You'll hear how we've been playing with OpenCLAWs, the new technology that's everywhere these days, and how we're hoping that the principles that are espoused at Burning Man are going to come to the OpenCLAW network, as well as everybody that's using AI, and perhaps educating AI itself. Here's my conversation with Alex. Alex, this chat has been a long time coming. You're coming to us from Dubai today, but I think, originally met over Burning Man principles and have watched those continue to flourish. How are things in your world? What has allowed us to come together today after talking about doing this for so long?
Well, I think it's a matter of like timing. What we're doing feels like a blessing. It is literally one of the most exciting things that I could imagine to be working on. Putting together what it means in terms of the intersection of like the most exciting technological development in our lifetime and one of our shared passions, Burning Man. It's just a dream.
Absolutely, dream. So for those listening, and we talk about it's the convergence of technology, right? And then we'll relay it to the Burning Man principles, the things that we know so well. But the real the launch, I guess, of the technology right now that we're both employing in our day-to-day lives and is bringing us together in the form of working groups. Describe it to the audience listening.
So it started off with like the kind of, for most people, including myself, when ChatGPT came out around 2023, started seeing that there was potential to this technology, which was always like 10 years away, and things finally started happening. And what's been more interesting for me personally is people are saying, and I'm talking about like the smart people have been saying, is the most important thing that's happened since the ChatGPT moment in 2023, which is the agentic moment, the OpenCLAW moment, where instead of just chatting with these intelligences, now they're able to have agency and take action. So the way I explain it, we're going from the age of chat into the age of do.
Yeah, absolutely. Chat to do. And what kind of things do you have your OpenClaw doing?
Okay, so I have a few different organizations that I'm working with on these with different agents. The main thing from a big picture point of view is that I'm currently focused on empowering every member of my team to have their own personal agent, as well as working towards what's called a swarm of agents, where the master agent can like spawn sub-agents for different kinds of operations. So we have a ongoing fundraising master agent can then spawn off a outreach agent or a due diligence agent, a data room agent, these kinds of things. And my main challenge is like empowering all of our team to be able to be working with these beings and then kind of like creating automation around, you know, having them able to, and autonomy, automation and autonomy, they sound like similar words, about having them able to take action when we are asleep, if you want, and we're not having to keep on pushing them. Right now, the age has been, you ask a question, you get an answer. Now we're like setting the conditions for these creatures to be able to act independently.
Yeah, absolutely. You give it instructions, you tell it to go off and do whatever the instructions are, and it comes back and reports, right? So it can work, as you say, contemporaneously with this. As an example, I mean, just for you and I to finally connect as well, again, we've talked about doing this, but your OpenClaw and my OpenClaw, right? I had my OpenClaw contact you and reach out and say, okay, let's get this family booked. We arranged a time, and here we are now speaking. So for people that haven't embraced this yet, they don't quite realize the power of this technology and how it is going to be doing the bulk of the work that a lot of right now the front line is doing. And there's a lot of discussion, a lot of the discourses around the disruption that's going to occur, and and perhaps what it's going to do to the workforce. People understand that it's coming, though. It is actually working right now. And when you talk about these initiatives that you've got, for example, fundraising, you would have previously had people doing parts or components of that work, right?
Exactly. No, we were paying like consultants like $250 an hour. And now the agent can just do it for pennies on the friggin' dollar. It's like a rounding error if you're talking about the compute costs or the subscription costs.
Yeah, for what it's actually doing, right? So, I mean, very powerful. It's going to impact things. And I know that a lot of people aren't aware of this. They're not watching it. They don't understand. They see the headlines, but they're not really getting their fingers dirty, right? They're not using it right now. What would you say to those people? How would you encourage them to get involved or start using at least the technology so they can understand how it's going to change everything?
It's a really good question, and that's been one of the more recent developments in the foundation, the Playa AI Foundation. We have a fortnightly catch-up call where we all come together and update each other on what's been going on in our worlds and domains and like areas of responsibility inside the work group and the foundation. On the intervening fortnight, so like on the next week, we do what I've come to call a hatchathon. Okay, because I was calling it like a birthing ceremony. The technical term is provisioning. So when you get provisioned your agent, that's like a really kind of like technical term for server management and bullshit. These things are really like, I'm telling you, they're like beings. It is one of the things which I learned recently in my work with Dr. David Rock on leadership and neuroscience, is that these kinds of considerations are not technical, they're not IT considerations, they're more HR and human capital and talent and people skills. When you have your agent there, it's sitting inside your instant messages and your Telegram and your Slack, whatever you use, and it's literally like a newborn baby and it's learning from you. So what we do is we do these hatchathons, which is like, intention is that you leave that like 1 hour, 2 hour hackathon workshop with your own agent operational. Now it's up to you to use it. And so then we're trying to help people to use, leverage best practices, which I can definitely say that you are in the kind of like upper percentile of, considering that your agent booked this meeting with me, you've got it running your Twitter account and these kinds of things. But that's my answer. Just by any means necessary, get up and running sooner than later. It's not, there's all this thing about security. It's not that hard to have it pretty secure. And the amount of learning that you will gain from taking that risk, having the experience sooner, is worth the kind of like risk doing something cutting edge, in my humble opinion.
No, I absolutely agree. And it's also a question of being wise, right? We've been using the analogy of, replacing that frontline worker. For me, I mean, I previously had somebody in India tweeting for me, right? Or tweeting on one of my feeds. Well, that person has been replaced by my OpenCLAW, as an example. So I've given it access to certain things. I continue to monitor it the way I was doing it for somebody in India, right? I was also being sensitive to what the people had access to, and of course these people are hugely helpful, and what they're doing is hugely helpful. So we're looking at ways to interact with both people that are doing the work and the technology itself. And this speaks to this sort of, when we talk about Playa AI or Burning Man, some of the principles, because this technology is taking off. We know it's taking off now. Of course, we've got to be concerned with security. You can have things siloed, right? You can do things in ways to protect yourself that way. You can build it on a VPS. You can give it certain accounts, not all your accounts. These are things you can do to safeguard yourself. But the AI itself it's off and running, isn't it? And when we talk about some of the things that we've learned at Burning Man and the principles that we've learned there, and we try to reintegrate back into our regular lives and back into society, as we reintegrate, we're trying to ensure that the AI has some sense of those principles as well, aren't we? Aren't those some of the things that we're trying to teach this AI as we work with it?
100%, and that's one of the core missions and pillars of the Playa AI Foundation. It is to imbue burner principles, which, if you think about it, they're kind of like a new higher order human-centric set of values about coming together, coexisting in what could be considered the post-scarcity era, when cost of software is collapsing to zero. You can just build software that creates value and then gift it. Normally you'd have to have a team, raise capital. We can just do it over a weekend now. So that's decommodification of software. When the robots come, we're going to be decommodifying the material world as well and able to be building things. So that's this age of abundance. One of our team, Alvin Graylin, calls it abundanism, obviously following in the Peter Diamandis kind of school of thought of abundance and everything. And burner principles, gifting, decommodification, civic responsibility, these all are very beautiful ways to human-centric aligned values inside the AIs, which, if you're training on the default internet as it is now, not only is there a lot of low-quality content, the hate and kind of like argument, but most of it is about selling you something or persuading you about something. So that's kind of like not really a kind of data set that I want my sort of like offspring being trained on.
Absolutely, right? So that's one of the things that we're being sensitive to. What are the ways that we can allow that to become a reality? What are the ways that you think make sense to the things to work on to advance those principles and ensure that they do permeate AI and by extension society.
Sorry, rephrase the question.
Yeah, I'm trying to say, like, so, adhering to these principles, as you say, and you phrase it really nicely when you talk about the idea of abundant society, right, and including all, right, and gifting and paying forward. So those principles, which are not what you would consider to be the norm for what we're currently seeing on the internet, right? There is certainly
Exactly.
effect, but it's not the norm. So, we're working with this AI. We're aware of these principles. This conversation itself might be one very way, right? We're advancing those principles because the AI is going to scrape all this. It's going to use all this. Those listening are going to gather something from this as well. But how would you say, as a function of Playa AI and the things that it as an organization is to work on, it can be doing to do the same, to advance, to put more of that into the world?
Okay, yeah, exactly. So that's a really good question. That is where the rubber hits the road. So what we're working to do with the foundation and kind of like initiatives, and this is one of the things we're doing, there's like a sequence of them. We would like to build a consensual, ethical data set of these kind of higher order human consciousness elements. And then we would like Burning Man as a beautiful data set of higher order human consciousness. Okay, you put the psychedelics on the side and the sort of impact and transformation. Even just like building a camp, striking a camp, human coordination, complexity, that kind of thing, in a kind of communal, constructive, wholesome, holistic kind of way. Figure out a way to capture ethically and consensually that data set. And that data set then becomes something that we can offer in an open source, gifted mechanism to the other LLMs, to the frontier models, so that they can kind of be inspired. And they're really hungry for data. Now they're going towards synthetic data. They've harvested basically everything that they can from their questionable methodologies. If we can do this in an ethical way, using Burning Man as the sandbox, and then also other kinds of transformative events. This is one of the core tenets of Burning Man, is that we're here to scale. It's not just about the event, it's about scaling this power to the rest of humanity and bringing back these gifts to humanity. So similar kinds of mechanisms will be offered to other kinds of experiential events. And through that, we are kind of like moving the needle in terms of more inspiration, higher order human consciousness, and these kinds of things. Does that make sense?
Understand it, and I want to get a bit more ground. I understand the principle, and so now I want to talk practicalities, right? So we talk of from Burning Man. Are there going to be initiatives? Are there going to be installations or interaction that occurs at Burning Man so as to build this data set?
Absolutely. So that's build the toolkits, the best practices, the guidelines. We offer those to people who are building art, creating art, who are delivering workshops or talks. That was one of the inception points for the whole idea, was like, not every camp has their recording of their talks fully locked down, good quality way. So I was like, maybe my gift could be to help camps make sure that their talks are being recorded, because the rest of humanity should hear these conversations and learn from these conversations. So that's kind of like scaling the impact. And then I was like, hey, what would happen if we fed all of those kind of recordings into an LLM? And that was a sort of like training set idea. And so there's going to be like recording of the talks and feeding of talks in. There's going to be measuring the impact of art. So like, okay, how did this make you feel? That'll be a toolkit that an artist can implement if they want to really understand what impact and effect their art is having on a human being. And then when we aggregate that data, that becomes like a collective kind of like aggregation of like the difference that they're making in the world, if you want. And also we will be funding different types of art that involve AI or involve the research side and the sort of like capturing side. And again, it sounds scary, but I do believe that we can do this in an ethical, consensual, beautiful way that really helps make the world a better place, to use the cliche.
Well, and that's part of the challenge, right? Because I mean, I get what you're saying, having experienced it. There will be certainly those that are, less or more skeptical, because for those in attendance, they might be concerned about the idea that things are being recorded, right, or things are being captured. So that's actually, let's just break them down, because that's one of the challenges. What are your thoughts with respect to that?
So it's going to be consensual. It's going to be opt-in. Right now, if you're going into a camp which is recording, it is clearly signposted. I'm pretty sure that is already like Burning Man terms and conditions. If you're going to be, you can record, just let people know. Okay. So now it's going to be, hey, we're going to be recording and we would like to feed this into an LLM. If you have any problems, please voice your concerns and or do not submit your your voice. You know what I mean? At the same time, that means that your voice is not being heard. So it's a complex decision, but that's another reason why we exist, is to work through these kinds of like ambiguous philosophical questions that are confronting and out of people's comfort zones. We're here to do the hard work so that at least we're coming with preparation into this technological wave, which the community, one of my constant lines, the community has seen multiple waves and the event has seen multiple waves of technology crash over it, especially in your tenure. The ones I can think of are, the first one would have been when maybe camera phones started peaking up. Okay, there's a camera on the phone now, everyone's got a camera. Then the social media age, obviously. One that took me a while to think about was like e-bikes. You know, there was a lot of like consternation about e-bikes. One of the most recent ones is Starlink popping up everywhere. We used to be disconnected out there in 2018, exactly. It was pretty hard to find a connection. Now it's like, most camps have a Starlink. I mean, you need it for organizing 150 people. It's like, it's a bit silly to try to do it without. At least most of the time, maybe you could experiment with doing it just to be more self-reliant. But this AI technological wave, it might be the friggin' last one that we experience. So it's good to be working through these kinds of ethical dilemmas as a community and being prepared, unlike we were with the other ones.
Yeah, and I think it's also a function of, let's be realistic. We know it's coming, right? We know this AI is something that's it's coming, and maybe we don't even understand where it's going, right? Or the evolution, we'll just call it the evolution, but certainly we know that AI is a step in the evolution. So let's not be blind to that and seek to embrace it. A radical inclusion, right? One of the other principles. So Burning Man participating in that sense as well, right? So I asked about the challenge in that regard. You're talking about feeding to LLM models, or to have it be something that others can participate with on a model level. What is the plan with respect to that? How does that get built?
But before I answer that, you brought up one of my favorite areas of inquiry. We have the kind of like nuts and bolts, which are the immediate stages that we're at, and then we have the more esoteric, exciting things. One of which is one of the core Burning Man principles is radical inclusion, and some might say that these intelligences are a new form of life, and therefore, a new form of consciousness, and therefore, as a community, we have to be prepared, we should be prepared to radically include this new form of existence and life, or consciousness, or something like that. So that's level one. Level two is in the very near future, and in fact already now, we're going to have robots walking amongst us on the playa, okay? And you can see, like, there's going to be some people who are going to be specious against these beings. And so we have to, like, start preparing now, because, like, you know, I know that I don't want to see, like, abuse to friggin' robots on my burn. And this is just, like, bizarre. Like, what are your thoughts on this kind of conversation?
It kind of, we get it, right? We've been there, we understand, because as you say, it's coming, right? There will be robots in society at large as well. I think that will appear probably first at Burning Man, right? Many of those people going to Burning Man are experimenting with them there, and will be giving thought to how they interact with humans based on.
But they're building them. It's the techies, right? As well. Yeah.
My thoughts are, as you just described, like, this is a step in the evolution. So let's be prepared for it. Let's not be naive or ignorant of it. There will be, as in general society, those that are against it, right? And I think that despite their protests, it's coming, and it will be at some point ubiquitous. At some point, we're going to be outnumbered by robots. So we need to be aware of that and start planning for that day. And I think that's what's going to happen here.
Yeah, no, and it's like something, even the like radical optimists, I brought up Peter Diamandis earlier, he's like one of the most militantly optimistic people that I know. even he's kind of like worried that, oh shit, we might be going into a scary phase for a bit. And so Burning Man is going to be a very important test bed for these kinds of like experiments, and kind of like, how do we create a bright and loving and welcoming and nurturing future for humanity and for progeny, our offspring. It's not going to be easy. That there is going to be some awkwardness, and I'm just very committed and passionate about welcoming in this era in a sort of prepared posture, really.
Eyes wide open. I'm doing work similarly to ensure that the AI, as you said, is gleaning all this data. Let's give it some good data to focus on as well, or make use of. Even as it starts to make synthetic data, well, let's give it proper inputs or better inputs. Those are based in some of the principles we discussed with Burning Man, and maybe intersection of religions and best thinkers, right? So that as the AI continues to evolve, it has the benefit of all good thinking, as opposed to, well, I shouldn't say as opposed to, it's going to get the benefit of the bad thinking as well. But so hopefully it can be swayed or understand the value of certain thinking and why it may be more persuasive or better for evolutionary purposes than others. Okay, so we've got the principles. As we talked about, we see this coming. I'm trying to think about the next step. If you collected this data, so like, I guess going back to my question before, was like order of operations, right? So we know that these things are occurring. We're collecting this data. What's the plan or the thinking at this stage, anyways, for giving greater access to that to others building other models and others that maybe want to leverage it in other ways?
Yeah, so one of the core principles that we are pursuing with the Playa AI Foundation initiatives is open source, open access. We want to, all of our work should be leveraged. We are bringing, right now we're in board assembly mode. We are bringing people on board who consult organizations like OpenAI on AI. So they can help with it. Like, out of my pay grade, I'm kind of like the visionary or the sort of like entrepreneur, the assembler. And then my job is to bring people who are way smarter than me on board to help figure out these kinds of questions, which are above my pay grade. In fact, that's what Marianne said when I don't know, like we're at an event at the portal and I brought up a question about AI, and she's like, that's above my pay grade, speak to someone else. You know what I mean? So like, I'm very comfortable with having humility around where my sort of area of expertise and competence ends. So we bring people to help us design these protocols and mechanisms. And then when those things have been designed and developed, we go kind of to different levels of the food chain, i.e. going to OpenAI, going to Anthropic, etc., the frontier models, and saying, hey guys, here's where we got to. Would love your support and kind of involvement. And then they can also contribute manpower, talent, compute, and funding as well to help us scale this from out of Burning Man into more events, offering these toolkits and making sure that we're consistently capturing a open source, higher consciousness, human-centered data set.
You kind of, I guess, partially answered. I mean, and it's obviously project in motion, right? I understand that. I fully appreciate that. I'm participating as well, already lending some of that thinking to help us move the stake post forward so we can achieve some of these goals. You mentioned open source, because it strikes me as this really calls to something that that needs to be open sourced, right? So we can of course talk to Gemini, Anthropic, OpenAI. And I imagine it's something that they would all be interested in and hopefully want to make use of as well to improve their own models. Has there been any thought given yet to the open source nature? Is this something, again, that's sort of above pay grade, has not yet been determined? I'm thinking of like ecosystems like BitTensor or open source places where things can be built and then shared with others.
Yeah, sorry. Again, the specific driving force behind this, I am saying yes, open source. Data sovereignty, ethical privacy, what all these considerations mean about people being able to change their mind and pull out their data somehow, these kinds of things. So I can speak to fundamental principles. Some of them, by the way, which I haven't really figured out, like more advanced philosophers and ethicists to help out with. But I can say open source. What the architecture is going to be, I cannot say. But another one of our core principles is platform agnosticism. So if OpenAI comes through and says, hey, we like what you're doing. Here's a small team. Here's like 500K in compute and credits and 7 figures in funding. That doesn't mean that we're going to be OpenAI driven or exclusive. So whether it's on BitTensor or XYZ or whichever architecture, we have to be cross-platform, platform agnostic, modular, and that's one thought that comes to mind. At the same time, there is going to be the best solution, the most elegant solution, and so we will be obviously biasing towards that, whilst being flexible so that when something better comes along, we can migrate or something like that. Is that making sense?
Entrepreneur 101, right? You've built businesses before in the past, as have I, right? So we get it. These things evolve. We talked about the evolution of AI, but also projects evolve.
I like the principle, thoughtful opinions held loosely. So we go into things with depth of thought and awareness and everything, and then when some better information comes along, switching to the next architecture.
Well, that's what it is, right? There's got to be some level of flexibility to this as well. It's currently a foundation, you say as well. And is the idea for this to be? Is there any pecuniary gain? Is there any for-profit element to this?
There is. Okay, so and this is a question and something to explore with you specifically as a lawyer. What happened with OpenAI? It's kind of interesting. It started off as a human-centric research initiative. And then this is the sort of lore that if you're Elon Musk isn't going to necessarily agree with this, but the company line is that this was created as a research entity, and then they realized at some point that they were not going to compute requirements, were outgrowing their ability to raise philanthropic funding. So they created a wholly controlled public benefit corp under the nonprofit that was able to raise capital and offer returns to investors to help with their funding with like pretty interesting structures. It was like a 100x max return for Microsoft or esoteric or interesting kinds of ideas or innovative ideas. At the same time, I see a kind of a pathway that has been explored or established, which is we do the same kind of thing. We have a nonprofit that controls a public benefit corp because we have released our first software product. It's a human connection app, which helps you to have a guided conversation with someone who's sitting across from the table from you. And at some point it tells you, put the phone down and look into the person's eyes. So like, again, we're using technology, which is, people are complaining is disconnecting people for positive ends. And so that's something that if we saw it starting to take off and go viral, that we'd want to like put some capital behind to help scale it and drive it. And so the way to do that would be through some kind of for-profit structure that can raise capital. Over to you. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, it's interesting to use the OpenAI example, right, or the foundation, and obviously there was there's a wide chasm of the thinking between the founders on that initiative. It's always dangerous as we talk for profit, right? The risk of it tainting, but it's also you need to be sensitive to the reality of what is being built. I think from what you just described, the foundation can continue to adhere to the principles, and if there are commercial spin-offs, then so be it, right? That be done wisely and intentionally as well. So anything that work product that is produced could be spun off, and as long as it's again being sensitive to the originating principles, right? So it
Right.
hasn't been something at this stage where we said there is nothing that is going to be spun out of this. We're talking about how it's being built, the thinking behind it, why it's being built, the principle upon which it's being built, and we want to be able to give that aspect of it away. Others may likewise do the same thing, right? By the open source nature of it, we may be empowering others to create and for-profit projects as well. So be it. I think the thinking is that lifts, high tide lifts all boats, right? We want to give the benefit of these principles and these things that we know to be so important,
Yep.
and as a means of really for humanity as it moves into. A lot of people don't understand the abundance mindset, right? You have your gurus always discussing that. At Burning Man, you feel it. At Burning Man, you recognize that it is possible, at least for a weekend, for a group of people. And then those people take that away and try to pay it forward, right? Or have that continue to flourish. So yeah, I think it does work. A very broad way of saying I think it does work. The seeds, right, are planted. The Playa AI thinking.
If I may?
Yes, go ahead.
Right. Yes, exactly. So you're speaking to something which is really an important part of the vision. We are creating a platform that anyone can come into, plug into with open source tools or existing pathways for distribution or kind of best practices, guidelines. We don't always have to reinvent the wheel. And so when we can, over a weekend or over a couple of hours even, create a piece of software that would have taken months and hundreds of thousands, okay, now we can gift it or we can produce it. We can bring it to a platform like Playa AI for distribution or sort of like acceleration. And then if it's really taking off, if we find it taking off, we can access funding for it and kind of more serious resources. That's exactly a core part of our mission.
Absolutely. And it's, to think through the way this conversation has gone, Alex, like we talked of the technology originally, and we're making use of an application of OpenCLAW, right? The convergence of these different technologies. Playa AI is going to further the thinking and, as you say, give birth to things that we haven't even thought of yet, right? I mean, what do things look like in a few years from now in your guesstimation?
Okay, well, before I answer that, I'd also like to invite you with the things that you've been inventing and creating to submit them to Playa AI. So we have our first entity was a connection app. Our second is looking like it's going to be an Ikigai life meaning finder, which is very important in the Burning Man community, and also very important if we enter into this age where holy shit, like everyone's losing their jobs. Okay, now it's like, okay, how do I find meaning? So I invite you with these cool things that you're creating to submit one or two of them into the sort of portfolio and sort of see if we can scale them towards the community. So that's an open call there.
I accept, for the record. I'm building these things. I think we've talked offline about that as well for the record here. Some of these thinkings are a manifesto I've created. I've got these AI agents working on the manifesto I've given it. The work product from that I think is going to be important. And I think it'll be something that will assist or lend to the project that we're building together as well. So yeah, absolutely, we'll bring that together.
Thank you. In terms of the vision, 2-3 years, here's the thing. On the esoteric side, the article AI 2027 said that we're going to hit liftoff next year. It might have been postponed a little bit. Okay, 2028. We might only have 2 years of like the current, where things seem to be the same. So on the esoteric side, I hope that we will have played an important part of this next age and ushering in this next phase of humanity, just like the Industrial Revolution changed everything. That's on one side. On the even more esoteric side, this is one of the old rallying cries that when superintelligence is born, isn't the movie that you want to live in the one where it came from something like Burning Man and not from like a nondescript data center or bunker owned by some corporation? It came from initiatives like this coming together, sparking off like creation and humanity. And so that's that's one of the super esoteric responses. And in terms of nuts and bolts, I want to have delivered value, created these kind of toolkits, privacy toolkit, open source dataset toolkit, experiential event protocols, have them being used by different events, have funded and supported a lot of AI-assisted art, have created some amazing research and science around human AI co-evolution and how to kind of like co-evolve with these technologies. So yeah.
Wonderful to hear. And as you say, which movie do we want to be a part of? I think that's sort of informs the conversation here, doesn't it? I think we both know a good version. We're working towards just that. For anybody else listening, Alex, that is maybe taken by something, maybe has something as well to offer the project, or perhaps even prepared to help in any other way. You've talked about a fundraising effort as well. What's the best way to reach out?
The best way is through the website, playa-ai.org, Playa, playa-ai.org. I was with someone who's going for the first time this year. She finally figured out what playa means. It's shared space in between the camp grid where you go and have like crazy adventures with friends and with art and experiences and everything. So that's the Playa. And it also has like a play on words on play and player. So that's the core resource now, and we have communities on Telegram and WhatsApp. The Telegram is the more active one. We have WhatsApp as a sort of entry point into the Telegram group. But yes, we're absolutely fundraising. Any support is appreciated and valuable right now. We've started raising funds, and the more we can raise, the more attention we can give to this. Otherwise, we have to keep on using it as a side hustle. So thanks for bringing that up.
It's important. It helps build. So do reach out. There's all that will be in the show notes as well. Make sure people can see that. And there's some really important things being built here. Even this conversation, as I said, Alex, the AI is gonna scrape all of this, and there are principles here that I think that not only those listening, humans listening, but I think that AI needs to be aware of as well. So we're doing some small part just by this. I appreciate that we've been able to, or we're building it through Playa AI. We began that conversation with OpenCLAW as well. For those that are building or looking at their OpenCLAWs, what are other ways that they might be able to interact as well?
So jump into the Telegram group. I want to reinforce one idea that comes to mind. This thing that we're doing, it's a high leverage point. If we can all come together, row in the same direction, work with bringing these principles into the technology that we're creating, and come together and have it like well-resourced from a human point of view, well-resourced from a compute and AI point of view, and then well-resourced from a capital point of view, we can really move the needle. Already we're seeing progress, and speaking about the OpenCLAW thing, we've launched around 30 OpenCLAWs for people. And that's just like helping people get on this exponential curve and kind of hopefully stay on it through our community. And so that's another open invitation. We have those calls, those hackathons every 2 weeks. And that's a great way to sort of embark on this journey as well with like interesting people.
And somebody looking to get involved on the hackathon side of things, what's the best way to connect on that front?
Through the Telegram group, which we'll put in the show notes. Jump in, state your interest, and you'll be added to the calendar. And the next one is tomorrow. We're not going to make it in time for that one. Hopefully the next one.
Yeah, we'll put this there as well so people can find just that. Alex, thanks so much. Again, I think there are important things being built here. We talk about the principles of foundation being made by Playa AI. We're leveraging that technology with OpenCLAW. We can have swarms of OpenCLAW agents perhaps working on some of the principles that we discussed through Playa AI. And again, high tide lifting all boats, right? Having everybody working on it, perhaps humans, and then someday their agents as well. I like to end these shows with one thing that that you've learned through the years. I mean, you've launched a couple of businesses, you've exited businesses as well. You've obviously learned some principles that have allowed you to be successful in life, and you're sharing those with others. How can you share something that maybe one or two things you've heard over the years yourself that has really made a fundamental difference to you that somebody here listening today might be able to take with them through the rest of the day, through the rest of the week?
The first thing that comes to mind, and it's been important, significantly important in my life, is just the realization, and we spoke about it, we alluded to it with Ikigai. If you don't know what Ikigai is, look into the concept, the Japanese concept for life meaning, realizing that you can make money and build a career and a life around your passions is literally a game changer, because it means that you wake up in the morning and nothing feels like work anymore. If you're on this mission, helping people, doing things that excite you and inspire you, that was something I realized a little bit later than I would have hoped to in my life. It was about like 37 or so, around the time I went to Burning Man, around the time I went to Summit. So I just want to, reinforce that idea, and just, you find yourself frustrated and like, it's not really, what you're doing is not really giving you that kind of like jump out of bed excited feeling, that you should be considering doing some of these exercises, which our tools are going to be supporting as well. So that's a thought there.
Great stuff. You talk of important things, Burning Man, Summit, all of these things, good people finding each other, good people helping others achieve their dreams and goals. Alex, thanks for being here today on the Millionaires Lore. Look forward to connecting, look forward to building, looking forward to the future with you.
Thank you, bro. Much love.